understood. They said, boy, just give up. You don't have what it takes. They said when you were made, they made a mistake. But my skin don't tell the whole story of me. It's my heart, it's my soul that sets me free. My skin don't tell the whole story of me. It's my heart, it's my soul that sets me free. So now that I know the truth, if we hold the love in our hearts and pursue the dream, it can heal you and me, and I won't give up.
Good evening. I'm Allison Stagner, and I have the great pleasure of being Seattle Arts and Lectures Director of Events and Outreach. Welcome to an evening with Julian Aguon, in conversation with our Community-Curated Series Director, Sasha LaPointe. As we begin, I want to acknowledge that wherever you are joining us from, we are all on unceded lands of Indigenous people. Here in Seattle, we stand on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Muckleshoot people. We recognize their stewardship of this land where we now live and work, and the disruption of their care by colonization. We are grateful for their continued stewardship of these lands. At SAL, we are committed to supporting and building relationships with Native communities through real action, connecting with the Duwamish tribe through Real Rent Duwamish, and learning about, featuring, and sharing the work of Indigenous writers and thinkers. To learn more about our work in this area and SAL's commitment to and journey together towards greater racial equity, please visit lectures.org/about. And to learn more about the land you are on, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. If you are joining us in person, welcome. Thank you for coming out to connect to ideas and to each other. And if you are joining us online, welcome. You are also an important part of tonight's story. Our tagline for this year is simple: you belong here. And we mean it. Wherever you are, whoever you are, you belong at SAL. Our huge thanks go to the many people who have made this evening possible. Thanks to our season presenting sponsor, the Seattle Times. Thank you to essay sponsor, the Race and Equity Initiative at the University of Washington. Thank you to our bookseller, Elliott Bay Book Company. Please buy a book from them. And thanks to our media sponsor, KNKX 88.5. Thanks to our organizational supporters, all of whom are thanked on our website, and special thanks to major support from all of our public program supporters, to Amazon, the Amazon Literary Partnership, Arts Fund, the City of Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, Echo Fund, the Four Seasons Seattle, the Margaret Casey Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Washington State Arts Commission. Funding from these partners and support from people like you enables us to allocate 10% of our tickets to $10 reduced price tickets or free tickets for our community groups or individuals through our Community Access Ticket program. And finally, thanks to all of you for being here tonight, for believing in the transformative power of books, writers, and deep conversations. Could we get a round of applause for all of our supporters, please? Thank you. The format for this evening is going to be a conversation between Julian Aguon and Sasha LaPointe. Whether you are watching in person or online, you can submit a question for the conversation by going to slido.com, that's SLIDO.com, and entering the code 513-73277. The Slido access code is also in the pre-event email which you were sent, so check that out. You can also vote your favorite questions to the top if you see ones you really like. If you need any technical support for the online event, please email us at boxoffice@lectures.org or call our box office at 206-621-2230. And if you are posting tonight about this event on social media, the hashtag is #SalLaPointe. We always begin our events with a reading by a writer from our Writers in the Schools or Youth Poet Laureate programs. Tonight's writer is Macarius Payne from taqws K through 8 school, who worked last year with WIT's writer-in-residence Karen Finney-Frock. Macarius is a 5th grader from the Central District in Seattle. Macarius is also the author of Mousy Locks, The Car Thief, and African Fat-Tailed Geckos, all illustrated by him too. Macarius is a full-time student and hopes to become a full-time writer when he grows up. Please join me in welcoming Macarius Payne.
Hi, my name is Macarius Payne, and today I'll be reading a story that I wrote, Jen Wave. It was a cold and wet evening on January 5th, just outside of downtown Seattle. There was an amazing baby being born on South Main Street in a small brick apartment building. In unit number 5, there was a small cry and a curious meow, and at 5:47 that evening, Jen Aronian Wave was born. As a kid, Jen always thought that if he tried hard enough, he could do anything. The thought of doing anything really boosted Jen's mind to try hard. When Jen was 4, he could do a perfect butterfly stroke, and by the age of 6, Jen could fix his apartment's plumbing in 5 minutes. By the way, Jen could drink a ton of water, so much that when he coughed in his community garden, he watered all the plants in the place. Jen always wore his blue tunic with a perfect star in the middle that he had drawn himself, because stars and blue were 2 of his favorite things. One day, when Jen was 12, he was reading a book on Arctic penguins when he heard a knock on his door. He got up to see who it was, and it happened to be Brad, the guy who was always at the front desk of the pool Jen went to. When Jen opened the door, Brad came in. "Very cozy in here," he said in a gruff but gentle voice. "But rather on the small side," he added. "It is the perfect place to come home to after all the day's work," Jen replied. "Yeah, I guess I see what you mean," Brad said. "Anyway, I came to give you your swim trunks. You left them at the pool last time you came." As Brad was handing Jen his swim trunks, there was a terrible splash that made the sun crackle and pop and say, "How dare you mess with me? I was sleeping, you know." "What was that?" Jen asked. "Don't know, but it sounded like there was a huge wave that hit land or something," Brad said. Jen went outside to find water was flowing directly outside his apartment. "No wonder people call it Seattle. It's literally a sea of water," said Jen. "Oh no," cried Brad as he came up behind Jen. "What are we going to do?" "Wait, give me a moment to think," said Jen. Jen knew he could drink a lot of water, like a lot of water. The average that Jen could drink was 12 tons, but he didn't think he could drink all the water that flooded Seattle. Jen thought and thought for several minutes before finally coming up with an idea. "I know what to do," Jen said triumphantly. "I'm going to go to the Columbia Tower to drink all the water." "But you can't do that," said Brad, now sounding worried. "Course I can," said Jen, and with that he started to swim to the Columbia Tower. When he got there, he frantically ran up the stairs. To be exact, it took Jen 47 seconds to get to the top. And when he did, he took a good look around himself. "Wow," exclaimed Jen, "I've never seen a view like this." Jen needed to get back on track. His plan was to drink all the water by jumping off the side of the building. It was dangerous, but he wasn't scared. Jen started taking big breaths in and big breaths out. Then he took one big breath and jumped clear off the side of the building, and with one big gulp, Jen swallowed all the water. Jen landed softly and quietly on the pavement next to the tower. Jen thought about what to do with all the water he had just inhaled, and decided, after a little bit of thinking, to put it back in the Puget Sound. Jen jogged to the docks and dove into the water. Then he opened his mouth and released the water back into the Puget Sound. He then climbed up the dock ladder and walked home to curl up in his favorite armchair and think about his day's worth of work.
Thank you, Macarius. It is now my immense pleasure to introduce Sasha LaPointe, who will share a little about her relationship to Julian's work and why she invited him to present in this series. Sasha LaPointe, our Community-Curated Series director in 22-23, is from the Upper Skagit and Nooksack Indian tribe. Native to the Pacific Northwest, she draws inspiration from her coastal heritage as well as her life in the city. Her memoir, Red Paint, the ancestral autobiography of a Coast Salish punk, was published by Counterpoint Press in March 2022. She writes with a focus on trauma and resilience, ranging from topics from PTSD, sexual violence, the work her great-grandmother did for the Lushootseed language revitalization, to loud basement punk shows, and what it means to grow up mixed heritage. We are eagerly awaiting the publication of her collection of poetry, Rose Quartz, which is being released by Milkweed in spring 2023. Please welcome Sasha LaPointe to the stage.
Twal Gualapo de Ishad, Es Chalchuv, Siiyab, Siayaya, Takshablu, Seedsta, Twal Nuksak, Gwal Skagit. Hello and welcome. It is an honor to be here with you all tonight. My name is Sasha Takshablu LaPointe, and I am from the Nooksack and Upper Skagit Indian tribes. I'd like to begin by raising my hands in thanks to express my gratitude for the wonderful folks at SAL for giving me the opportunity to invite authors and artists I admire to come out and share some words with us. When the news first arrived that I'd be able to curate my very own series, I knew immediately I wanted to put together a kind of dream list of Indigenous authors and artists, people whose ideas and words I think are so profoundly necessary right now. Because collectively, we need healing, because the world needs healing. I wanted to invite people who I believe very strongly that we could all stand to learn something from. So it is my honor and my privilege to introduce our first author in this series. Julian Aguon is a fellow Indigenous storyteller. He is of the Chamorro people, the Indigenous people of the Mariana Islands. He is an astounding writer, as well as an Indigenous rights lawyer, the founder of Blue Ocean Law, and the author of this gorgeous and much-needed book, No Country for Eight-Spot Butterflies. He is a remarkable human being, one who I am so humbled to be in the presence of. He's also a Gemini like me, and I just found that out, and I'm very excited. For me, this book could not have come at a better time. And in several of the essays found within, I was moved by Julian's gifts of words and storytelling, gifts of seashell and strength to graduating students, and I wish I could follow suit and tell you all to look under your seats right now to find this beautiful book as my gift to you, because I really need you all to read it. I need the whole world to read it. But I'm sorry I wasn't actually able to pull that off, and sadly, there is no book under your chair. But please give this gift to me and to yourselves, and go out immediately and find this book. And when I say this book couldn't have come at a better time, I mean that collectively, I mean that communally and globally, but I mean it personally as well. Because oftentimes, the weight we can feel as Indigenous people, the heaviness of settler colonial violence, of intergenerational trauma, of wounds carried through lineages, and of worry over a world caught in the chokehold of late-stage capitalism, it is hard not to allow yourself to just be crushed. I feel like I am nearly crushed into oblivion on a weekly basis. For example, I recently traveled to Spokane for the first time since childhood. As my partner and I walked along the riverfront park downtown, I kept eyeing signs that read in my ancestors' language, Salmon People Island. I followed the signs because, of course, I had to go, because I was delighted to see the traditional language amongst the more corporate or sterile-looking art. I was excited to stand on Salmon People Island. But when we finally made our way through the busy park paths, past children with balloons and ice cream cones, and people feeding ducks and people skateboarding, what we found on Salmon People Island resembled a ghost town, desolate, neglected, untended. It was the only place in the whole of the park that seemed to be forgotten. The only place no litter had been picked up, no manicured landscapes or lighting. It was abandoned, and it broke me open with its emptiness. At the time, I was working on an essay about salmon, specifically my tribe's salmon ceremony, an essay about decolonizing my diet and about the joy and honor it is to welcome the first salmon of the season when it arrives. But what broke me open and made me howl and cry in the middle of that park on that sunny day was the simple fact that I had heard that there are no longer salmon east of the mountains, that Salmon People Island is empty, that the Spokane River no longer welcomes salmon home. I was quiet for the 5-hour drive home. I was lost in my grief and the crushing weight of a question: how long will it take before there are no longer salmon in the Skagit River, the Nooksack River, or anywhere? And what will that mean for future generations? This is the kind of crushing I am talking about. Days after my trip to Spokane, I was talking about ancestral land and memory and books with a dear friend who is in grad school. They are Native Hawaiian, living on the Big Island, and writing their thesis on the Hawaiian language and birds. We were sharing coffee and passages from one of our favorite novels, Sharks in the Time of Saviors. But when my friend read aloud a line vague with sugarcane and death, a passage referencing the violent colonization and near destruction of the islands, I watched them break open too, just as I had on the Spokane River. I watched them start to shake and tremble and cry out loud, "This is still happening," they said. And I knew what they meant because I had felt it too. It's a sort of powerlessness, and it can be overwhelming. As Indigenous people, we are reminded on a daily basis of things like survival, of attempted erasure, of what we have in the land as something that is actively vanishing. I ran to my friend and wrapped my arms around them until they stopped shaking, until they were quiet and still as we held each other. In our quietness, a kind of healing occurred, a silent recognition of strength transferred in the simple act of feeling held or heard. We knew in that moment that neither of us were alone or without power, and that despite everything, there was in fact some hope. Those few seconds, that moment that passed between my friend and I, is a precious thing. It's a hard feeling to come across, and it is the exact same feeling I had as I read every page of Julian's book. In his tender moments of memory and grief, of love and loss, there is a kind of magic in the text. Entire beaches become stars. He dreams of growing wings to gift them to others in need. It is less call to action and more song of hope. It is the shifting of a question, one that asks us to not simply focus on what we as Indigenous people have had to fight against, but rather what we are fighting for. It is a quiet togetherness, a moment in which I felt held and hopeful. It is a hug from a stranger that spans oceans and time. It is, in my traditional language, a sabada, a gift. So to Julian, I say, taqʷs, thank you for your gift. Please welcome Julian Aguon.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you so much, Seattle Arts and Letters. Thank you all of you, for just being here and gifting us with your presence. This book, as she said, I wrote this book primarily as a way to process my grief. I wrote it at the height of the pandemic, when I was losing so many loved ones, not only to COVID, but to suicide. I think at the height of the writing, the local suicide rate was 1 person in every 6 days, particularly young people. And it was such a chilling time for me. And that isolation, the isolation that the COVID sort of, produced in so many of our lives, really created the space for me to write something that I never really intended to write at all. I'm glad that I did, but primarily I was writing to process my own grief. And I realized something profound about 75% of the way through, that I think this is the thesis I stumbled upon writing this book, that grief, it's so often isolating. It's so often a wall, but maybe it can be a bridge. This piece is entitled, Zugu means yoke. The last thing I said to my father when he was still alive was how much I hated him for having cancer. And I hated him hardest the night before he died. It was Halloween. I was a teenage mutant ninja turtle, Donatello, and all I wanted in the world was to get as far away from that hospital as I could. The hospital that smelled like spite and served as a second home to my siblings and me in the months leading up to his death. I threw an epic fit after being told my chances of going trick-or-treating weren't good. I fretted as the hours rolled by, convinced there'd be no candy left by the time I got there. I let every adult in my dad's hospital room, including my dad, know how much I hated being there, hated cancer, hated him. I nagged my poor mother so hard she finally relented and told my oldest brother and his wife, who had just flown in from the States, to take my sister and me to the mall. I knew that the candy there wouldn't be half as good as the candy from the houses in Nimitz Hill, but I was dying to get out of there, dying to breathe some other air, dying to have just a little bit of fun. But, of course, it was my dad who was dying. Unbeknownst to me, he had been rapidly declining all that day and was, according to the doctors, decidedly on his way out of the world. Of course, I understood none of this then. At 9, one cannot read the signs, cannot see the harried pacing of nurses for what it is, cannot see the emptiness in a soon-to-be widow's eyes. After we buried him, we moved permanently into the house on the hill, the blue and white house on the highest hill in Mount Santa Rosa, the house where everything rusted from the saltwater winds that blew in with a vengeance from the Philippine Sea, the house that was never a home. I hated that house. So did my sister. I suspect my brother did too, though he never said so. It's hard to tell because we barely spoke at the time, at least not about anything that mattered. In fact, I mostly avoided him. In fact, we mostly avoided each other. Each of us mourned in our own way. My mom by crying, my sister by self-isolating, my brother by leaving, and me by eating. Believe it or not, though, that wasn't even the problem. The problem, as I see it now, was that each of us mourned alone, as opposed to together. I see us so clearly. Each of us an island, all of us at sea. We didn't stand a chance. Luckily, we each found something to get us through those deeply lonely years. My mom found she could disappear into her work. My brother found a girlfriend. My sister found Janet Jackson and a bunch of our dad's old t-shirts, which she wore religiously because she smelled him in them. And I found a whole wide world on that red dirt mountain. The first thing I found was a family of tree snails, which I'd spent hours watching, wondering why they moved so slowly, wondering if they could, if they had to, move swiftly enough to save their own lives. I found so many things after that. I found I could slide down the smaller slopes at the back of my house if I had just the right piece of cardboard. I found out the hard way that before one runs through an open field of swordgrass, one should wear a long-sleeved shirt. I found no need for a bike. I found butterflies in abundance. I found more grasshoppers than I could count. I studied them closely. That is, when they'd let me get close. I was awed by how far their little legs could take them. I couldn't, for the life of me, fathom how such small legs could support such big hops. I wondered endlessly about wings. I was envious of everything that could fly. I prayed, without knowing how to, for wings of my own. I wasn't the only one. Further down the dirt road, my friend hanged himself in his house. The house closest to the bus stop, where we took the bus to school every day. The house where words were shouted, not spoken. The house that was never a home. I learned so many things after that. I learned that same friend was an artist, that he loved to draw, that he drew a picture of a friend just before he died, that he tucked it away in a box beneath his bed, that he was capable of gentleness. I did not exactly know that because my friend was also sometimes my bully. But that's the other thing I learned, that when we are in pain, we inflict pain. That when we feel we can no longer breathe, we grab other people's air. I also learned this. Jigo, the village we lived in, comes from the Chamorro word zugu. Zugu means yoke, as in to bear a heaviness or to carry a burden. We all bore that heaviness. My sister most of all. I know this because once when I was 10 and she was 11, I found her outside in the middle of the night wearing nothing but my dad's old shirt, which she had washed one too many times and which she said no longer smelled like him, though it had been only 1 year since he died. I was beginning to be able to read the signs. I could see the emptiness in her eyes. I changed my prayer right then and there. I prayed for her wings, not mine. Thank you.
Oh my God, thank you for that reading. That was literally, it was hard to choose a favorite, but that one, that piece busted me open, busted my heart open, made me cry on the couch in a beautiful way, and it was such a privilege to hear you read it. Thank you.
Thank you too.
I'm glad that you read that essay because I kind of wanted to start with this question. And also, before we get carried away, I want to remind the audience that you can go to the online Q&A link in your email and use the Slido app to send us your questions. And please do. Send me your questions and I will ask them. It will be fun. But for now, it's my questions, and that's exciting too. As someone who also kind of related to writing at a young age as this sort of ritual of healing and this place to disappear into in moments of grief or loss or trauma, and it became very apparent to me that writing was a thing. And I guess, especially after hearing this beautiful essay aloud, my question for you is, when did you know that writing was the thing? Because to me, when I hear, and I loved when your book dipped into the baby Julian moments, like the moments with those, like the swordgrass and the tree snails and that red dirt, I felt like maybe that was a click moment, but a writer is born moment. But can you talk about that a little bit of when writing became the thing?
Thank you so much. That's such a freaking good first question. I appreciate it deeply. I could say that was the moment. I mean, it definitely was the beginning of it, for sure. Precisely because I was, dealing with the loss of my father, but much more than that. It was. I watched my nuclear family fall spectacularly to pieces, and I was so alone at that point. And I realized that loneliness, it sort of clothed me. It enveloped me in a way, and I turned to books, of course. I mean, I read so much. I mean, I had such an appetite because, a book was an escape, and an escape was something I desperately needed. But actually, it was the moment that really sort of did it. It's traumatic, and I'll just be frank about it. I write about it in one of the other entries. It was an instance of elder abuse. I saw my grandmother being abused. I won't recount all the details, but it's in the book. But I talk about being, my 8-year-old self and hanging upside down by my ankles, and my cousins are tormenting me and passing me back and forth. And I realized that, I lacked the language. I didn't have command over the language I needed to set myself or her free. And to me, that's the moment a writer is really born. It's not when we have the words, it's when we don't have them. It's the absence of language that gives birth to a writer, I think. I don't know why this is such an emotional talk all of a sudden. No, I think it's the piece. Sometimes it's hard to read because I'm right back there and I see my sister and I love my sister so much. But that death so early on has been such a gigantic struggle for her, and it's affected the rest of her life and all of our lives, but hers in particular. Yeah.
And you turned the whole piece on its head with that last line, that bust open your heart line where I changed my prayer right then and there. I wished for her wings, not mine.
I mean, she was a very good older sister at the time. Yeah, she was great. She was one of my first teachers. She herself has struggled with like various disabilities when she was young. But I remember being in one of our homes. This was way before my father passed, and I was so young. And she would break out this little chalkboard thing. My mother and my parents invested in this little tiny play chalkboard thing, and she would come home after her lessons and she would actually teach me, because God knows I'm terrible at math. I literally am allergic to math. I can't even do a tip without a calculator. It's friggin' terrible. But she would teach me. She was so excited to bequeath me all of this. So every time she learned something, she would teach me it, immediately. It was her mission. But yeah, so we were just very, very close back then, yeah.
And I love the details you choose to include that bring us into it too, of yes, you were observing your sister whom you love so much in her grief, but then adding these moments of joy for her as well, Janet Jackson. Oh, what era?
Yeah.
Janet Jackson was literally my first concert.
Right, for real. Design of a decade, when I think of you, don't even get me started, I'll list all the songs I love. And talk about an enduring artist, Yeah.
But also in reference to the other essay, and that is a powerful essay where you remember being 8 years old and that moment of voicelessness and sort of disempowerment. You end that piece with actually singing to your grandmother, right?
Yeah.
So you found your voice.
Yeah.
And that's a moment. This book is full of so many moments, you guys. Go read. I don't want to I'm no spoilers, I guess. I don't want to tell you how every piece ends, but they're phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I definitely, my grandmother, suffered from dementia, from Alzheimer's, and toward the end, she would just one by one, she just couldn't remember us, and I remember that mine was the last face that she could recognize, and so I was with her the most, and, when I was young, very young, I was a child, gospel singer, I was always singing, so I would just sing a lot to her, yeah, but she used to sing to me, so it's only appropriate.
I love that. Are we hitting up karaoke after then?
Possibly.
We have been, as we've been chatting and getting to know each other more, which has been so lovely, that we have so many overlaps. Not only are we Geminis, we ran into a dear family friend of mine who Julian knows and remembers. I'm okay, the universe has clearly crammed us together for a reason, and I'm here for it. But one of those overlapping moments that I wanted to ask you about is, before we met and knew each other, I went to IAIA, and you have a friend who was also IAIA alum, Tommy Orange, and I just found that out yesterday when we were on the phone. So can you talk about Tommy Orange and how you met Tommy and anything you want to share?
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much for these questions. I really appreciate it. You could argue that Tommy Orange read the book and the rest was history. I mean, my life dramatically changed after meeting him. And to be clear, we've never met in person, many people I met during the pandemic. So a friend of a friend passed him the book, and he reached out to me, which was crazy because, he's the author of There, which is an incredible book. Shortlisted for the Pulitzer for fiction. I mean, just a really great book. But he was spectacularly generous. Like, he read it and he was like, "Do you have an agent?" I was like, "No." "Do you want one?" "I think so." Because I should say that, like, I'm a full-time human rights lawyer and I have like a day job, you know, and I never ever, like, I litigate, it's crazy, this other brain that I have, like, in this other world that I sort of inhabit. I try to use the law, just so you know, to protect Indigenous communities all over the Pacific, and I'm really proud of that work. But I have longed for a change. Like, I want to take a turn in my career. If not forever, then at least a sabbatical. Just put it down for, lay it down gently for a few years at least, and really explore this thing, you know? And honestly, it all happened because Tommy Orange read the book. He emailed his agency, the Iraji agency in New York, and they contacted me and they were like, "Yeah, so Tommy Orange, one of our writers, said if we don't sign you, we are crazy." You know, like, so he just sort of set this wheel in motion, and I think the reason I'm just so taken aback by it, because, you know, like, it just showed me that, man, this new wave of Native writers across continents, across oceans, we are just in a beautiful dance, in this beautifully non-competitive dance together that doesn't feel like so many of the other horror stories that I hear about from other aspiring writers, where it's all like they're locked in an adversarial sort of worldview, and they just are like, they just sink, you know? And it was the exact opposite. And I was like, wow, this is how it could be. Tommy Orange is modeling Indigenous excellence. He's just showing us how to do it.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for sharing that story. I think that it brings to mind, I mean, Tommy is one of the most generous, like, humans alive. Like, he's also just a phenomenal writer and creature. I love Tommy. But even on a different scale, and my day job is far less impressive. I was a waitress, bartender or something when I was, you know, down in Georgetown at a punk rock pizza place, not doing the strong work that you are. But years ago, when I had just finished grad school, I was really stuck working on like the next thing of like what was going to happen after Little Boats in a manuscript that I had finished grad school with, but ultimately went nowhere. And I remember Tommy reaching out and just like so generous with his time, just to say, even just to remind me, like, write something else. And I was like, oh, I could do that, right? Like, just like such a, like, wise beyond his years, like, just to know that sometimes that's what we need to hear. And this idea too that another good friend of mine, a filmmaker who is just incredible artist, we also went to IA together. She was talking about this same, like, this lack of competitiveness, this nature that, like, you know, we need to help each other and lift each other up. She was like, yeah, instead of like closing doors, like, I think about like when a friend gets a book deal or a friend gets invited to be in a writing room, I just think of it as a really cool party that if I get invited into, I'm going to leave the door cracked so my friends can come in. And
That's
I'm like,
exactly right. That's
yeah,
exactly right.
and I feel like that's so needed right now, and it's happening. And
No,
you can see
it is happening. And, you know, and there's so many other, like, incredible Indigenous writers just popping up. We were just talking about Tay Tibble and her great collection. I was just, and there's another, like, this other thing coming out with Milkweed. I didn't know that yours is coming out with Milkweed too. No'u Ravilla is an amazing Kanaka Maoli poet. Just, the book is called Ask the Brindled. It just came out. It's fire. It's really good, yeah.
Yeah, we also like bonded over this massive love of Tay Tibble, whose book Pukahangadas is out. Where she's going to be at Elliott Bay next week, and I feel like we were just made in the same petri dish.
I know.
Space.
They just separated us by mistake.
Also, please keep the questions coming because we'll get to audience questions towards the end, but please send them if you have them. You can ask him anything. No, you can't. You can't ask him anything, but, you know, ask him some things. I guess another thing I wanted to chat about and ask about, we've already talked about when was writing the thing, your connection to Tommy Orange, all of the overlap we seem to have. I guess another question I have for you is, what are you, Okay, wait, no. I'm going to put a pin in that because there were so many moments along the way as I was reading your book where even your foreword, you open with, you have this list of every writer in the footnotes, every writer you mention, who are writers that you have connections to and that praise your book, right? Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I was reading the foreword and then I saw a footnote and I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. This writer wrote the foreword after.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway.
Okay, no, I'll
say
just
it more eloquently.
No,
than
no,
I
I'll
am.
just try to. Okay, so basically, I love Arundhati Roy to an almost ridiculous degree. I do. A lot, just so much. I have an entire footnote. It's a love letter disguised as a footnote, really. And it's long. I mean, it is luscious. I mean, there's a lot of detail in it about why I love her so much. And the craziest thing happened, like in the whole wide world, you know. She agreed to write the introduction to this book, which is, I'm still sort of like, sometimes, I don't know, like when it happened, I woke up in the middle of the night, just think, okay, no, that didn't happen. But it did. But the reason why it's so special is not just because she's like one of the greatest, you know, sort of like minds on our planet right now, but it's also because it's like that generosity thing. Like, I mean, the way it was really, how that happened was that through activism. So I'm also part of an amazing progressive group. It's called Progressive International. It's just like such a gigantic and rapidly growing group of people who are trying to sort of mobilize around various global justice campaigns. So we were working during the pandemic against vaccine apartheid and criticizing these like multinational groups in charge with public health and basically solving some of these really important problems. We were criticizing the Modi government in India for various crimes against humanity. Like, we'd done so much like on the ground work together. And at the end of that thing, like one of my good Indian comrades turned to me like, "Oh, your book is gonna be redone, like, and it's gonna come out as No Country for Baseball Butterflies." And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "I read it, you know," and so like he already knew of my love for Arundhati Roy. He was like, "I'm just gonna give it to her. I'm just going to give it to her and ask her to do it. And if she loves it, and only if, you know, I'm going to ask her to do it on behalf of the humble people of the earth." I was like, God. I was like, okay, don't tell me about it. I don't want to know about any, because it's too much, you know? It's like staring at the sun. It's just too much. But yes, and she did it, and it was beautiful. And the introduction, and the last thing I'll say, because this answer is obnoxiously long, I realize that, but it's also her generosity, like Tommy's, Arundhati's introduction didn't have to read that way. Like, she could have made it narrow and commented on voice or craft or some little tiny thing, you know, and she didn't. She said this, she like wrapped her arms around me in this embrace, you know, it just felt radically loving. And that felt like grace, because you're not entitled to that. That is not, it's a gift. It's like what you said, it's a gift. And all of this, even the entire book tour I just finished, because you know this is my last event. I'm finally going home to Guam tomorrow. I'm so excited. I have been on the road. Yeah, thank you. I have been on the road for 6 weeks, but just meeting some of my favorite writers and scientists and journalists and all of this stuff, but it's the generosity that's really been so astonishing. Just people being loving, like, and just perfect strangers, you know, and bringing all of that. And together, I think the thing that I'm most excited about, like all of those rich conversations, the one we're having now, all of them are pointing toward a future of abundance, you know, and it can be that way. It can be full of joy and it can be full of abundance, despite sort of the scale of the problems that we're faced with today. Yeah.
And I think that I just want to add, or, you know, snowball onto your answers, that I think that your book is so deserving of that and sort of encourages that love and invites it in. Like, by the time I got to the footnote that was a love letter, like a footnote disguised as a love letter, is there a really beautiful like line about the moon in there, by the way, or like where you're imagining?
There's something about moonlight, yeah.
Moonlight, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, you talk about this, like loving a book so much that you throw it down.
Yeah.
That's, before I met you, how I knew we were kindred spirits, because my partner, my housemates, they'll often see me on the couch just go, oh.
Yeah, it's right?
So dramatic.
It's so dramatic.
I love it. Right?
Sometimes you, like a sentence is so good, you just are about to die.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like,
you're like, I'm going to have an actual stroke. Like, it's too much. Like that's, but you're to be in the present. But that's what's so great. It's not books only. It's music. It's all of the art. Like all these things. You know, like it's this. Art is nothing but the announcement of the presence of the beautiful. That's what it really is. And I was like, the people are announcing it, and they're like, look there, you know, and it's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing, yeah.
I'm so just in awe of your ability throughout this book to, yes, write a love letter and a footnote to a writer that you admire, that you love. And it's also a love letter to the land, to the ocean, to Indigenous people across the globe, all of these things that, as I was thinking of how in the world I would even like express my gratitude for having this book in the world and in my life, like the two moments I thought of were the moment with the salmon where I was sad, and then the moment where I saw my friend break and I immediately had to get up and go to them and hug them. Like your book feels like that, I think for so many, I don't think I just know, like for so many, like that quiet stillness, that moment where we can come together. And I just, that wasn't really a question.
No, I feel you. I feel you on it so deeply because, I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? Like we look at a world whose contours give us pause and we just say, you know, am I enough? Are we enough? Or do we have the wherewithal to do this? Like climate change is putting us on an unforgiving timeline. We have like barely 8 years to get our collective shit together. We do. And there are moments when it's something about climate change in particular, something about its sheer like scale, the enormity of it. But I also see like, and what terrifies me is sometimes I'm in the presence of young people who have learned somehow, you know, to walk away prematurely from the problem. They haven't even like learned about their gifts. They haven't called them forward. They haven't done all of that work, and they're walking away prematurely. And like, that is the thing that like truly is the most like devastating thing to witness, you know? So this book is really, if I want to say like who the love letter is really for, it's to young people who are in search of their words. It's like young people who are reaching for the language that they need to graft their will upon the world. That is who this book is for, you know? Just so that they, you know, they need to know the truth. And the truth is that cynicism is easy, hope is hard. And they have to find the spiritual maturity to stay in the conversation and to fight hard as hell.
I think you beat me to, yes, could we have a moment? Thank you. I think you beat me to one of my questions, and thank you for doing so, but maybe you can add to it, where a couple weeks ago, a friend and I, they're an incredible two-spirit Indigenous like performer. They're in multiple bands. They do a solo performance. They're such a light for me in my life. When we get together and do stuff, it's magic. And we also get together and have very sad, dark conversations. I tend to be the one like driving it to darkness. I can't help myself sometimes. But the last time we were speaking, they said to me, well, you know what? I feel like the young people are going to be the ones to like help us out of this. And if you think about what they're doing right now, like radically challenging everything. And they were like, let that soothe you. Like, not that, you know, like that you have no responsibility, but at least trust in this younger generation to carry us a little bit more forward. Can you add, and you just spoke to that, but can you add to, my friend is right?
Oh God, I have no idea.
The radical youth are going to fix things.
I mean, yes. I mean, you see all these youth, you know, Fridays for Future, you know, you see just like, I mean, Sunrise. I mean, there's so many things, you know, happening that young people are leading, you know, but that doesn't sort of alleviate the older generation from, you know, like equipping them as carefully as I can with enough tools. Like, I've also sort of seen that happen, you know, like just, I was like, so young people, they have the passion, but maybe they don't have all of the information, or they need more training and more guidance and some things. So like you know, old people are not off the hook. You know, we're all in it. We're all in it together. And I think that is the thing that's sort of fortifying to me. You know, the answer to the question of climate change must come from everyone, or it will come from no one. That's the truth. It is like we all have to bring forward, you know, our gifts and our talents and our time and our broken hearts. Yeah.
another moment in this beautiful book that struck me is in the title essay, No Country for 8-Spot Butterflies. And it's when I'm hoping you could just talk a little bit about, as I was reading through, I had this personal reaction to it, which we've already talked a little bit about, but it was when you were talking about a woman, and is it Auntie Frances?
Mm-hmm, Auntie Frances.
And talking about the traditional medicine workers, the traditional healers, these women in your life who gathered plant medicines.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, and again, before we knew each other, I was like, oh, you come from traditional healers and plant medicine, like, of course you do. And then I started thinking about in this idea of like, do you think that there's a connection between like coming from and having this knowledge of like traditional healing, and then we're both up here on a stage talking about writing, talking about books.
Yeah.
Is there a connection there, do you think, or can you talk about that? That was a
Okay, I
very
don't know
weird
exactly.
question.
Okay, let me just, I don't know, dance around your question, because I'm not entirely sure, because, you know, it's also so complicated, you know, with, for example, right now, as I speak, the United States, which is our administering power, because Guam, you should know, is formally recognized by the world legal community as a colony, meaning the fundamental right of self-determination has been denied actively. Our self-determination efforts have been actively stymied by the US federal government for 123 years and counting. This is a fact. You know, and so as part of what's happening now in 2022, one of the largest scale sort of expansions of the US military footprint anywhere is happening right now in Guam. It's part of a 2005 agreement between the government of the United States and Japan to relocate thousands of US Marines from Okinawa to Guam. And as part of that process, they are constructing a brand new Marine Corps base, the first Marine Corps base built anywhere in this country since 1952. As part of that process, they're building a massive total of 5 ranges. These are live fire training ranges. The largest of them is a 59-acre machine gun range, which is actively endangering all manner of our other than human relatives. We have been fighting hard as hell to protect the Mariana 8-spot butterfly, a critical habitat for the Guam Micronesian kingfisher, the sea heck, the Mariana's crow, the cocoa bird. You know, it is staggering the amount of sort of like endangered species that are actively being endangered by the US military so that it can shoot their guns, so that it can have this 59-acre machine gun range. And of course, the US military, in lately very repetitive fashion, keeps choosing the most ecologically sensitive places to sort of practice these war games. And you guys, it's not even just on land, it's at sea. As we speak, an area roughly 501,000 square nautical miles off the coast of Guam and the Sinai. This is our northern islands. No, they're known as the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, but we are one people. But the US military is militarizing a swath of ocean, you know, roughly the size of New York, New Jersey, Oregon, California, and like at least 1 or 2 other states combined. That is how big this swath of sea that's being militarized. And what does that mean? It means that they are going to actively harm, harass, capture, and possibly kill like tens of thousands of marine mammals. These are like Cuvier, like dolphins. These are humpback whales. These are green and hawksbill sea turtles. So this is why like I can't like walk away entirely from the law, because I'm always suing the US military. We are like always suing. So thank you. It's so fucking exhausting, to be frank, to always have to sue the federal government. And to be clear, okay, now I'm really getting heated. No, but to be clear, it's not just the U.S. military; it's other actors. So on land, it's Fish and Wildlife. At sea, it's NOAA and NIMS. These are federal agencies entrusted with protecting these endangered species, both marine and terrestrial. They're legally, statutorily assigned the job to protect these species. And what do? They issue the military constantly incidental take permits and actual like permits for those species that are listed. What are these? These are waivers. The US military has been legally granted a waiver from complying from actually caring about these species. They're just given permission. And so as a writer, so the law is limited. It's a useful tool, but has severe limitations. But writing doesn't, not in the same way as it's powerful in a way that doesn't have to play by the rules. We can call things out. We can name our enemy. We can it's powerful to say what you mean. So for me as a writer, I am in community with other Indigenous activists. I say, let's start calling these what they are. These are not permits. These are not incidental take statements. They are death warrants. That's what they are, because they mean to kill all of these creatures. And anyway, that's a very long answer. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
I love that I got you very fired up. Get fired up. You should be fired up. But also, to add to the weird, smoky, wispy Gemini airhead brain that I was grasping at was that moment with Auntie Frances. You said something really beautiful about going to her for medicines for bronchitis, right? And this, I think what clicked in my head too about this, this book that deals with climate change, with Indigenous human rights, all of these things, that line you had about you coming to her for plant medicines and her understanding and having the knowledge to gather them and to tend to bronchitis and other things. There was this really beautiful moment where she was like, will you give my life meaning because I'm able to gather these plants and do this? And so then you bring that whole element into it too, where it's corporations and if people aren't thinking about, they're just we don't care about a butterfly, we don't care about vegetation. Can we make you care about this woman's purpose?
Yeah. And it's unintelligible. I write in the book, no military on earth none, are sensitive enough to perceive something as soft as the whisper of another worldview. And that's precisely what I'm talking about. When I talk about Auntie Frances, I'm saying that this is what she's told me. She's so grateful that people still follow the traditional and look for the plant medicine. We call it almut. We seek out her services and we give her life meaning, but she literally would not know what to do with herself if she wasn't making medicine. That the life of a healer was always hers to have because she was born breech under the light of a particular moon. And in our culture, when a woman is born under the light of this moon, you are predisposed to having the hands for healing. Because, and that's so different. And that is what I'm talking about. It's a different imagination, a different worldview, a different ethos. And it's there's just no way, we live in a world where everything is commodified. It's the commodification of everything. It's and that cannot be, and that's why I'm so, I guess you could say, committed to my work to try to advance the rights of Indigenous peoples, because it is animated by a principle of anti-commodification.
And I'm getting very excited about your sabbatical, not
Me
because
too.
I want to take you away from Blue Ocean,
dying.
but because I think that you touched on something though that is important. That it's you can use your sabbatical to shift into writing more, and I loved what you said about that. And I feel like I need to get to audience questions. I'm getting all I want to hear about what you're going to do.
Okay, just one sentence. Yeah. So the big essay I wrote for The Atlantic, the one I told you about earlier, called To Hell with Drowning. The
Pulitzer Prize nomination one, you mean?
That's the essay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, just to be clear, this year has been a trip. I mean, it has been such a trip because I have never tried to write an essay for a mainstream publication, and it was shortlisted this year for the Pulitzer Prize in Commentary, which was statistically improbable as hell, because I'm not a journalist and it's in the journalist category, but all of it to say that it was so special because it was an essay that attempted to write about climate justice from an Indigenous Pacific Islander point of view, and that was what made it so special. I got to uplift, these frontline communities who are rarely, if at all, discussed, but often painted in just a very broad brush of victimization. They're a frontline community, they're gonna be underwater in 5 seconds, feel bad, and it's just so cheap, the way a lot of the writing is. It's just cheap, and it's an insult. Yeah. There's so many countries, even in my part of the world, I'm Micronesian. I'm from Micronesia. That is the region of the world I'm from. But we have countries that are punching well above their weight. Like the Republic of the Marshall Islands is one of the most remarkable countries on this planet. Like, they do ridiculously good work. You know, I mean, every government is capable, you know, we can criticize every government, but like, especially when it was, you know, when President Hilda Heine was at the helm, she really is a climate justice champion. And she really, I mean, a tiny Micronesian country, for example, suing all 9 nuclear-powered states in the International Court of Justice. A small Micronesian island state leading the Climate Vulnerable Forum. This is big stuff, you know? And I think that's another point I'm trying to drive home in the book. I was like, Micronesian, right, micro, it's one of 3 subregions of Oceania, and it's called the Small Islands. And I was trying to really harken back to something the great Pacific scholar Epeli Hau'ofa said. He said, smallness is a state of mind. And the Republic of the Marshall Islands proves that point every day. Yeah. Oh God, I think we should do I'll just do questions too.
Thank you. I know, I was like, we could be here
I have
till
no idea about the
midnight.
time. But I think,
I've got this little
Okay.
robot to keep me in line. Okay, so our first question comes from Jonathan. What would the independent Guam look and operate like? What would be our national identity? What would our society be like, in your opinion?
that's a great question. You know, that's like a dream, you know, for my homeland to be independent. I mean, of course, people have different views. Internationally, you know, we could choose one of 3 internationally recognized political status options. But this question is specifically about independence. And I love that because, you know, Guam could be so different. And honestly, I don't want to even like just answer like the basic way, like, oh, we would have better commerce, better commercial ocean shipping. We'd like all that, because as a lawyer too and as a policy person, I'm thinking about all of those exceedingly practical things that I hope we would do. But I want to take a bigger swing at this and be like, I hope that we would step up and actually not vote with the US all the time on certain vote. Like, for example, like I am disappointed in my fellow Micronesian states who are always voting with the US against, always not voting against certain actions that the state of Israel is doing. I find it very problematic that our voter confidence is at like 99%, whatever the US says we do. No, it's like if we were truly independent, we would take harder stands, more nuanced position. We would fight for justice even when it's hard to do. Like, for example, the country of Vanuatu in Melanesia, they take principled stands in support of the people of West Papua, who are militarily being, you know, occupied by Indonesia and suffering like horrendous violence. And we don't talk about that enough, you know? And so like, I would hope that if we were independent, that we would be a courageous country. And that we would, you know, try to operationalize what we're talking about when we say Indigenous imagination. Not just like lip service, but what does that mean in a practical 2022 kind of way? How do we operationalize these principles? How do we do that? How do we be good neighbors? And how do we balance interests, you know, with more sophistication and more goodness, more morality? You know, that is what I hope we would do. Yeah.
Okay, next question. This is kind of an exciting one because it's like about right here, right now, or Sal. So Tommy Orange is also a Sal guest. If we imagine a thread leading from him to you, who would you extend a Sal invitation to? This is the open the door, let all your friends in.
Wow, I love that. There's so many friends I would let in. But honestly,
it'll be crowded.
Well, just one of the first person that came to mind is No'u Ravilla, who I just mentioned. Her book, Ask the Brindled, it like won like a national like search in terms of like a poetry collection, but it is hauntingly beautiful. It is so good. I mean, some of her entries are, they're just startling, which is like what the best poetry does. You know, it should really startle you. It should feel like a distilled experience that then the poet just kind of drops on you. And she does it with so much na'au, which Hawaiians, I mean, it's the Hawaiian word for guts. She's like, it's so visceral. It's so from the gut. And I think that kind of writing really needs to be celebrated and uplifted in a space like this as well. Writing that is just not clever, but writing that is good, you know? Yeah.
Are you listening, Sal? Taking
Yes,
notes?
no Ravilla. Yeah.
Let's get her out here. Okay, next question. What helped you the most to get to the point where grief could be a bridge instead of isolation? And how can we help others get to that understanding?
I love that question. I think the real answer is always the same. Other people help me. I am not in this alone. I am not in my own island. I feel like sometimes I feel like and maybe this is the benefit or the gift of coming from a collectivist culture. I feel like I can access things like hope so much easier because I'm never on my own, you know? Like maybe that's precisely why sometimes when I'm with American audiences, it does feel sort of sad sometimes because I feel like individualism is breeding all of the wrong characteristics with which to meet the crisis at hand. Neoliberalism has conned us into thinking we can combat climate change as individuals, as atomized individuals, and we cannot do that. We have to do it collectively. But maybe that's the strength. It's other people are my strength, you know? Other people, and then the other reason when it's not other people, it's music. Like I literally probably listened to Joni Mitchell's Blue album the entire time I wrote the book because I just think it's one of the best albums of all time. But more specifically, in track number 1, All I Want, she has this line that's freaking arresting. I mean, if you really listen to it, but I'm gonna slow it down. She says, all I really, really want our love to do is to bring out the best in me and in you. That is it. To me, I was like, oh, put a fork in me because I'm done. I was like, that's track 1? I was like, what is going on with this? No, but that is what she tried to do. She tried to reach for majesty. That record is a manifestation of a human being so incandescent, so alive with the goal of reaching for excellence. That should be all of our goals. Otherwise, why are we here? If we're not going to be beautiful, if we're not going to be excellent, we are wasting our time. Yeah.
That's
an
a great
intense
answer. And also, I love how fired up about Joni Mitchell you just got. I am here for it. So you threw the album across the room.
Oh, I did. Right? Over and over and over. It's probably my favorite album, and maybe Miseducation, those two. By Lauryn Hill. Yeah, those are probably my 2 favorites of all time. Yeah.
I feel like we could put together a amazing reading list based off all of your footnotes in the book, and then based off this conversation, we could put together a playlist. You guys are going to leave here with a book list, a playlist on Spotify. We've got Janet Jackson, we've got Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, so we need food recommendations next.
Right,
yeah.
Snacks. Okay, next question. What advice would you give to a writer who has yet to find their voice?
I think, honestly, one of the most important things young writers can do and that they have to do is to learn how to quiet down the noise of other people. Sometimes other people are just really fucking noisy, you know? Yeah, no, they are. And they're all with their half-baked ideas or with their opinions about, they're not, you know, it's weird. It's like I'm cooking fried rice, but you want to give me an opinion about, I don't know, soup. You know, it's no, that's what I feel like. Sometimes I see young people approach the wrong type of people. That's another thing I would say. Really identify who truly is a mentor for you. Who is the elder? Who is the mentor that can really help shape you? That is a skill that young people need to develop. And I think they have to go with their intuition. I think they have to trust their intuition. When they look around, who has the gifts? Who has the skills in their sort of range that they have access to? Identify them and approach them. Yeah.
I feel like I want to add to this because it's,
Yeah.
I'm going to attach this next question to that, even though you already spoke to it. But Rufo and Curtis are also asking a question about writing. What can you say to encourage people who want to write but just don't know how to start? What's some advice you can offer to kickstart the desire? I felt like that was separate. Well, I just wanted to ask that one, even though I know you just answered one about voice, but this one's about getting started, so that's different.
Yeah, you just don't hate yourself so much when you start. No, seriously, I think some people joke it's like the tyranny of the blank page, you know? You're staring at it, and it's all doom. It is intense sometimes to get started. It is really intense. And then the real practical advice I would give is kill your inner editor for a while. You don't let them in the room. You lock their ass out. You're like, you're not going to edit everything as you write because you cannot write that. Like you're basically chopping down something that barely had time to grow. Like, writing needs to breathe, like it has to breathe. So you just write it. It's messy. It's unruly. It's inelegant. You just let it ride. You just keep going. And it's all of those things for a long time, for a good while. It's just so ugly to you. And you know that it's not good enough, but if you can do that, if you can keep the doors locked long enough, you will have enough material. And that material came naturally. It's the stuff that's not perfect, but the idea might be, and then you let the editor in, but you wait first. So that's something the really practical advice, that I would give.
That is amazing advice. It's advice I give to my students sometimes when they're like, oh, I can't write this because I don't know what so-and-so would think. I don't know what my ex-partner would think. I'm like, write it anyway, write all of it. Lock them out of the room, like the editor, the ex, whoever. Like you have to be able to come to the page in almost like your own sanctuary and like know that you're safe just to at least get it all down, and then you can edit later. Yeah. That's how you get started.
That's how you do. You just start. You start and you just realize this is going to be a hot mess for a minute. You just keep going.
Okay, next question from an audience member. As a grandmother storyteller, will you write a children's book? When back on Guam, eat some, oh gosh, I'm not going to know this word. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
For me, yum.
Oh, nice. Can you repeat the question, the beginning part?
Yes. As a grandmother and storyteller, will you write a children's book?
God, I have no idea.
Well, I think you have to. A grandmother just asked you to.
I know. Oh, God, I have to really, it would be a challenge for sure, but I would love to try. Yeah. And I will definitely eat Caliguin. I love Caliguin very, very much.
Okay, from another audience member, what does healing from climate change look like for Pacific Islands and Pacific Islanders? How do we give Pacific Island communities wings of their own? That's a very beautiful question.
Wow, yeah, no, that's a great question. I obviously think about this question kind of like all the time, I think the first thing is to realize, to take maybe a step back and realize often, not always, but often, Pacific Islanders already know what they want and what they need, and they're pretty articulate about explaining all of those things. It's like, so stop, like one thing I would encourage everyone to do is like abandon the language of the voiceless. The voice of the voiceless. No, like Arundhati, I think, was the one who said there is no really voiceless. It's like the deliberately or preferably unheard. Or the silenced, Pacific Islanders know exactly what they want. I'll give you one example. In the Marshall Islands, again, it's just a country that I love very much and a country I work with often. I think it took almost 3 years for like a little tiny bit of money to build a seawall, like one seawall in Ebi or whatever. Like 3 years for a seawall. The first generation stuff of like climate adaptation, this is like such low level asks. And they're taking so long. I think part of the problem is international funders, climate finance. And climate finance is just a newer manifestation of all the other sort of arrangements, multinational arrangements the world has produced, over all of these decades, over all of these decades that have passed since, the UN, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. A lot of what's happening, a lot of the problem is Pacific Islanders are not being listened to by those in power. Like, for example, those who head these sort of climate funds and other governments. So that is how we do it. We really stop talking and start listening, and we figure out who are the key leaders in the climate spaces in all of the different communities, and those leaders may not always be governmental. They can be non-governmental. They can be part of civil society. In the Marshall Islands, there is a young group called Jojicum. They do amazing work, and we need to listen to them. We need to listen to all of them because they already know what they need to do. They just need the funding or the skills transmissions or technology transfers. We just need to sort of stop projecting all of our shit on all these people. Yeah.
Great answer. Yeah. Kelsey asks, Julian, what would you say to young Chamorro people in diaspora who are seeking reconnection to our language, to our homeland, but don't know where to start?
I have so many groups that I can put them in touch with. So just see me after. And I'll just let you know, the best part of the entire national book tour that I just finished was watching all of the diasporic Chamorros get together in all the cities, from New York to San Francisco. Those are the two that stand out, but there was even Portland at Powell. There were Chamorros working. Chamorros aren't my people. There were Chamorros working, even as close as being on the same block in New York on the Upper West Side, don't even know each other. All of them are working in isolation. So the thing that was happening for me that was so thrilling was that multiple WhatsApp groups started being created at every stop of my book tour, because the book gathered together. It was an opportunity, a rare one, for all these people who care about Guam or Chamorro or otherwise to come together and find each other again. I mean, that truly is the best thing that the book has done. It's helped build community. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. But yes, please go see Julian after for that list of all of the.
There are, and they're based. There's some groups based in New York. Some, so West Coast, East Coast. There's also a Chamorro language learning class that my pari Miget Vavakwa sort of runs, and some of those people, I would say, upwards of 20 people actually came to the book because they were really started getting to know each other through this online language learning class that he teaches. So yeah, there are resources out there.
Okay, last question. I think we've got time for one more. Aiden asks, can you talk about being a good ancestor? I did not connect with my ancestors or have words for being a good ancestor growing up in diaspora.
God, it's a painful question, yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I mean, we don't always find our people, even when we're people. We don't always find a really good elder. Oh, this is what I want to say. Language has information. We as a people, the Chamorro people, have always understood that there are elders, people who have accumulated of a wide array of life and lived experiences that have sort of tended to wisdom. They have acquired. This is not about knowledge, it's about wisdom, because knowledge, facts are acquired, but wisdom is revealed, and we have a word for elders in our language, menyaina. We also have a word for someone who's grown old but not wise, and that word is manamku. Is just old. It doesn't mean old and wise. It's old versus old plus wise. But to discern the difference is very, very useful, because we know better. Not every older person is an elder or capable of being one. So stop attributing certain skills or gifts to that person. So that is also a really, really important part. And I'm sorry that this person hasn't had enough elders, but there are many out there. I know some who are part of the diaspora. I know, of course, many, many more who actually live in Guam. But if they need, I would be happy to be a resource person, at the very least to be a link to get them to be in touch with who I would think are more appropriate people. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
And everybody, please go get your books at Elliot. There's a table over here in this corner.
I'm signing there, yeah?
Yes, you can get your books and have Julian sign them over here in the corner. And please do that, because they weren't under your chair. You have to go get them over there.
Thank you so much
Please do that for us.
coming.
And thank you for being here. Thank you.
Okay, let's have